Hello everyone, welcome to my first kind of video entry here. It's going to be a brief overview of the deck I've been playing pretty much all week. We have the online, the pack 5k tomorrow on Saturday I'm going to be playing. And yeah, this is what I'm going to play. I mean, I've played all week. I've played at the set championships last weekend, and I won my Stitch. I didn't quite get there fully, but I also was pretty new to the deck, I would say. I just want to go over, I've done a few write-ups about the deck and some sample hands, but I really want to talk about it just because it's a lot of words I could really put into it, and sometimes writing isn't my best outlet for expressing my ideas. I tend to write like I speak, so I thought that I might as well just speak, and it's a bit easier to kind of orchestrate what I want. So forgive my cats, I just play with them for a good bit with the laser pointer running around up and down the house, so they're tired now, they're laying down. But yeah, this is the deck. I haven't really changed much from the set championships. I think I had a second copy of Baboom, only 2 Flynn Rider, and I had a second Zeus over something else. I don't recall exactly what. But no, I'm going to go through some of the card choices here and kind of just do a breakdown. Start at the top. Curse Merfolk is the best aggressive character we've seen so far, better than Maleficent Lilo just because it always trades for a card. Maleficent or Lilo, the other one, costs 2 lower characters that are uninkable. Don't often trade in combat, so you're always down a card in that exchange. But Curse Merfolk, making them discard, not only keeps you at parity as far as cards, but also triggers Prince John, which is a big part of this deck as well. Robin Hood Chain I've liked a lot in this deck. I know some people don't, some people do. It's more of an option, not more of a primary game plan. It's interesting to think that you actually have 2 sets of 1 and 2 cost characters that are actually better on the play versus the draw. Curse Merfolk and Robin Hood. Robin Hood's much better going second than it is going first, just because it lets you react to other characters they could play, such as a Rafiki that they're trying to get ahead with just by questing, or an opposing Curse Merfolk. So to kind of keep that parity, I think it's a good inclusion here. The other set I'll kind of go through is Flynn, Charming Rogue, and Mr. Smee. Both are 2 cost, 2 lower characters. It's a theme with this deck, questing for at least 2 since you're an aggressive base deck. Flynn is much better going first, and it's good going second too. It's not bad. You would play it going second, of course, but it definitely helps kind of compound the effect that Curse Merfolk has, making your opponent discard. Now, one of the things that differentiates this game from Magic severely is because you often have excess resource, or you often don't have excess resources in this game, because your excess resources often become ink, and decks are sort of designed to go long because of the influx of cards that a card like A Hole in the World gives you, even as the opposing character or opposing player. So decks have to kind of be designed with that kind of influx of cards in mind. So they have some cards that are in the deck designed to specifically be ink or inked in the early game. So making your opponent go down in cards is actually much more relevant in this game than it is in others, for that reason that everything is ink. So Magic, you kind of have, you can pretty easily decide. I'm just making a easy comparison for those who may play Magic, but you have cards that are specifically, your resources, lands in that game, and cards that are action cards, any spell, any character, anything like that. So being able to kind of hone in and make your opponent make a decision that's pretty tough usually of what to discard is even more effective in this game. Mr. Smee is just a solid body. It helps trade, and it also quests pretty well against most things. Surviving, or at least trading with a Madam Mim Snake or Fox, is really important with this card. Kind of why I like it over some other 2 lower characters you may or may not be able to play. There is no way to keep it in play. There's no captains in this deck, and that's fine. I don't think you need captains for this card to be good. It's just a good enough body on its own, and it's threatening. 1 card for 6 lore, if you look at that as a kind of burn spell in again, Magic terms there, just if you get 6 lore out of 1 card, that's a huge swing, and that can be enough to win a game. Ursula, the Deceiver, 2 cost, is pretty much a staple for every Emerald deck, I would say. That card I don't think has not been in any Emerald deck I built since it's been released, the 2 cost one. There are plenty of songs among every one of the top decks, and some decks are even playing more and more songs to kind of overload Ursula. You will miss sometimes, and you do need to identify when it is right to take the risk of missing, because sometimes, even in matchups where there are plenty of things to hit, I know that when I play the Ursula, if I miss, I'm at a severe disadvantage, because I needed that card to be an exchange of resources, and if it's not, the body is not that impressive. So while it's a very good card and you often play it, especially going first against a lot of decks. It's one of your key ways to beat Amber Steel is to have an Ursula to be able to play out if they start with a Cinderella, the 1-cost Cinderella, and that's a hard card to overcome with this deck at times. But this card definitely lets you do that, and it's kind of one of the key cards in both the mirror matches where anytime they lead on or they play a Ursula Deceiver of All, the 3-cost one that double sings your songs, you need to be able to stop them from doing that. Even against the Emerald Amethyst variants with Friends on the other side, that's one of the key cards. And often when not playing, it's very important to note that when not playing in best of 1 on Pixelborn or not playing against someone who knows what you're playing, it is pretty important to lead on a Steel Ink if possible, just to conceal the fact that you have the potential to Ursula them on turn 2, because often against Emerald decks, even in Steel songs, I will play and or mulligan away all my songs. Cinderella is both the best and worst card in that matchup when you're playing from the Amber Steel side, because it threatens a good amount, but you almost want to play it to threaten so that they don't play a 1-cost character, and that you also don't have songs. So when they play Ursula on turn 2, after skipping their turn 1 play to try and stop you from singing a Storm Rage on, you don't have anything. So Ursula is a very good card to conceal if you can, if you're playing Emerald, especially when going second against a Cinderella. But it's a very tricky card, and knowing when to time it is also relevant. Often with this deck, you're going to be playing out your hand pretty quickly, but there are situations where you want to hold it against the Ruby Amethyst decks to nab a Be Prepared just on a turn, but questing for 1 is always an upside. There's a couple cards here I'm going to kind of talk in tandem with. Cloud Kicker and Smash are very much the same card to me. They're both there to really answer an Ursula Deceiver of All when going second. Obviously, Kit can hit a bunch of things as well, and so can Smash, just finish off certain characters. But their primary job is to make sure that you don't get too far behind against an Ursula going second, or just in general. And Smash is kind of a nod to Ariel, and the Amber Ariel that sings for 5, because you don't really want to kit that card. So I kind of split the difference there on that. And I have a smattering of 1-of removal spells that are kind of good in some situations, bad in others, but you don't know what you're going to play against. You kind of have to have a bevy and hope to draw them when they're relevant. Otherwise, 2 of them are ink and 1 of them is just a powerful card that you don't want too many uninkables of. So Kit and Smash are very much similar, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point I figure out and decide that I want 2 Smashes, 1 Kit. I just want 3 Kits for some reason at the time, or if I want 3 Smashes. I don't know which one's right, but for right now this has been working out pretty well. And draw the good ones when they're relevant. So moving right along, Prince John's kind of the engine in this deck. Prince John's the only way you're really going to get ahead on cards in the early game and really kind of get an advantage. And it's one of your most important cards specifically against the Ruby-based decks. So Ruby Amethyst and Ruby Sapphire, Prince John's kind of your go-to. Combining with Flynn and Curse Merfolk to really hit your opponent's hand and get some kind of card advantage off of it. Also Sudden Chill. The dream draw for this deck does involve Prince John. It involves going Curse Merfolk, Flynn, Ursula, and then on turn 4, double singing a Sudden Chill after you play a Prince John. And then you have your quested Merfolk and Flynn, which you can quest with once you have Prince John in play, even against opposition from your opponent to challenge them, because at that point, instead of just getting a free discard from the Flynn and the Curse Merfolk, you're getting a free Hypnotize, which is a 3-cost action, which is definitely worth the inclusion there. So Prince John, not much need to really be said. It combos also with Friar Tuck, which is one of the more important cards I would say in this deck for being able to help put some pressure on their hand as well as play a mid game. You don't have too many cards that actually sing some of the songs we'll get to in a way that you don't just immediately lose value. And Friar Tuck's one of the ones that actually challenges quite well, oddly, even though it is susceptible to some of the more played characters like Maui and Madame Mim. It's just a 2-lore body, and it's quite good at helping close the game as well as just being an inherent 2-for-1. I definitely had many situations where I had a Prince John in play as well, or even when we both had 1 card in hand, I played this and made myself discard. That's fine. Knocking your opponent's cards out is a bit more important with this deck, often depending on the board state, just because your cards are on average going to be less powerful than your opponent's in general, especially if the game goes really long, just because you stop your curve at 5 and you're looking to just close the game out with some cheap aggressive 2-lore characters there. So Prince John, the discard package there with Flynn, Curse Merfolk, and Sudden Chill with Prince John is one that can fit into many decks. Ursula, obviously, if you're lucky enough to nab a Be Prepared, you can often Ursula on turn 2, have a second Ursula waiting in the wings, and you see your opponent playing Ruby Amethyst, playing your opponent, not your friend. Could be your friend. Take a friend's on the other side, and then you leave a Be Prepared so that you know that when you play your second Ursula after Prince John that you're going to hit something, so they can't ink the friends. But that's just a little nuance that can happen. But Ursula, Deceiver of All, obviously working well with all of our spells or our songs. We only have 12 that it can sing, but if it does sing them, it's incredibly powerful. Sudden Chill and Stormy John will just generate advantage. Ursula and the Stormy John is one of the primary things that Steel Emerald has going for it. Being able to double up on your 2 damage spell and draw 2 cards is really why you don't even need cards like Grab Your Sword in this kind of deck. Just had that incredible advantage that you gain in the tempo swing from taking out 2 your opponent's characters, or even 1. I've definitely taken out a Surfer Mini with 2 Stormy Johns, but even then you basically played a song for free, drew 2 cards and killed a character, so you're up 3 cards on that exchange, or I guess +2 in card advantage terms. But next up there, again, with the Strength of Raging Fire, you want 4 of each of these just to be able to help control the board, which isn't too often that it gets away from you in the early game, but it can. That's kind of also why Robin Hood is there, to help control some of the early board states that might get away from you. It also is an effective way to sing on turn 3. Say they have a 2-cost character you really want to answer. You're going first against the mirror match where you want to develop. You can Stormy John their Flynn if they play it out, but you also have this Robin Hood you could shift into and then storm, and that's a pretty big swing to be able to develop a character like this and then also take something else out. It was a bit more frequent that happened when I had more copies of Along Came Zeus, because it was a way to answer an Ursula going second, because a Storm or a Strength is unlikely to be able to do so on turn 3 unless you played 3/1 drops out on turn 1 and 2, which isn't too likely with only 8, and having enough resources to shift as well. That's 7 cards plus the Strength, so that's 8 cards to do that by turn 3, so it's unlikely you're going to be able to do that, but no, shifting this and playing this out, pretty nice combo, and this deck can definitely play from behind a little bit. I'll get to that in a minute. The Beast is a solid body. It's worse against a lot of the steel decks, but one of the play patterns that I've had come up a lot with this deck is against Ruby Amethyst emptying their hand pretty quickly, and they're only on 4 or maybe even 5 ink, and they don't have any cards left over. In that scenario there, Medusa is kind of off the table, and Beast lets you kind of pull back ahead, even though they might have a little bit of a board advantage. Beast drawing 2 cards, letting you find some of your ways to answer characters in play, and then eventually challenging, even with a point on it. It's actually kind of relevant, just because it takes out the Queen's Castle, which is the scariest card out of an Amethyst deck for you. I wouldn't recommend playing Rise of the Titans or anything that specifically hits a location, even though they are problems. You can manage those kind of cards there, and I think you're giving up too much points by putting those cards in your deck when you already have, in some situations, dead draws like Sudden Chill off the top late in the game. So I wouldn't advise playing Rise of the Titans at all, but Beast helps you kind of, in some situations, deal with those problematic locations. I've talked of the smattering of removal spells. They're all for different things. Obviously, the ones that Ursula can sing are a little bit better. So the 1 Zeus, 1 Baboom, Smash, they all have different bit of utility. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Smash and Along Came Zeus were the better ones, but I wanted an extra answer kind of I wanted essentially 5 copies of Ursula against a Cinderella, just to make sure that they can't get too far ahead against those decks, because Amber Steel can be a difficult matchup. It's not terribly popular right now, just because I'm not even playing it right now, just because of Ruby Sapphire being so prevalent. So that's a big part of why Baboom's there, and not in more copies, because there's not as much Amber Steel running around. One of the cards to highlight here is Flynn Rider, his own biggest fan. So it is a 4-cost uninkable 4-lore character. I've tried many cards in this slot. I've tried Tiana, I've tried Tinkerbell, the Evasive Tinkerbell, the 2/3. I've tried Big Tinkerbell, actually, in this deck too. But this is one of the ones that really has helped a lot winning games in a quick manner, because 4-lore is a lot. I mean, your goal is to empty their hand, and later in the game, your opponent's kind of torn between keeping cards in their hand if this is in play against to make this smaller, but also if you have Prince John going, all of your discard now becomes extra card draw. So it's really hard for them to kind of get out of the squeeze of Prince John and Flynn Rider. And being an evasive threat, I'd mentioned Tiana, which wasn't really working out against some of the Ruby decks like I'd hope it would. They were playing Scars, they have Mauis, they have Tremaines and Medusas. It's really just a mess. I mean, Medusa and Tremaine will answer Flynn just the same, but dodging Maui and Scar is a huge deal in those kind of matchups here. So it's really the evasiveness of it and the ability to close the game very quickly, in a matter of 2 turns of questing with it and some other things you might have going on or some early game pressure you're able to put on. It really lets you end the game. And one of the most demoralizing things when you empty your opponent's hand is just the fact that they get to top deck on you. So limiting the amount of top decks they have in their deck left is a big part of why Flynn is really spectacular, I think. I think it's just one of the best cards to play. That may shift. Part of this being so good is a big downtick in cards like Maui's Hook. No one's playing Slightly like I was in my Mufasa deck. That card obviously would give me a headache. But no, Flynn is one of the key pieces that I went from 2 to 3 of. Even though it is uninkable, this deck's skating the line of uninkables. It's just at the max number I think you can play in this type of deck. But the fact that one of your uninkables is a cheap, efficient character like Curse of Merfolk kind of issues that, since you're going to be playing it early anyway. So I don't typically count the 1-cost uninkables as too big of a detriment, because the bad part about uninkables is getting a bunch stuck in your hand. And you really don't have that many can get stuck. You have Prince John, Storm, and Flynn. Those are the ones that are uninkable besides the Curse of Merfolk. And these are almost always coming out on turn 1. And you always want to play Prince John as quick as you can. Maybe you set it up with an Ursula if you have a sudden chill lined up. But they're all cards you want to actively play. And Storm replaces itself. So you're kind of only potentially stuck with Flynn in the long game of Zeus. So while it is a little bit high on the uninkable count, I think it's okay. But yeah, that's kind of my explanation of a lot of the card choices here. Friar Tuck, again, just a good body. Robin Hood helping, coming back from behind, and an aggressive steel body, which you can play out in steel mirror matches. Typically speaking, Robin Hood's a better card to have in play than the Beast against steel mirrors, because most of them are playing many copies of Long Game Zeus. And the ability to help race may be more important than the cards themselves. It does replace itself, but if you're playing against a Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, which is probably one of the worst cards for this deck to see, since there's not too many clean answers to it, there's just one Zeus, and you have to combo kill it with Storm or Rage or something like that. This, isn't too relevant against that type of card, and steel mirror matches are a thing you will have to prepare for, and a lot of decks are very efficient at putting 1 damage on characters. So Robin Hood is a little bit better there, but Beast still solid when you're just top decking, and it's just the end of the road there. If you don't have Beasts or Robin Hoods, you could try maybe putting a few more copies of Flynn Rider over Robin Hood to have a shift target. You don't really shift too much with this deck unless it's for a specific reason. I wouldn't just generically do it, although it does come up that you can, as I mentioned before, shifting Robin Hood on Robin Hood can sing one of your songs earlier. This lets you even sing Zeus if you shift onto it, but I wouldn't want to go essentially down a card by shifting onto it to do that often. But yeah, that's the deck. If you have any questions, let me know. This is what I'm going to be registering this weekend for Thea's online event. If there are any updates, which I do highly doubt, I'm going to make any changes. I don't really have too much time to practice between today and tomorrow. This is what I've been playing. I hit rank 1 on the hardcore ladder, so I think Artifacts just took me over this morning, so maybe a couple hours ago. But yeah, no, this deck's been great. I'm like 17-0 with it in that form, or in that game mode. So I've had good experience with it so far, and I do recommend it for this weekend. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow. Check out the stream. It's the same kind of handle here at BDGandio7 for Twitch, so just should be streaming the whole thing. There might be a delay in my stream, but yeah, good luck to those playing as well, and any other events you guys got going on this weekend, good luck. See you next time.